Welcome to Private Banking Strategies Podcast with Vance, Lowe, and Seth Hicks, your secret weapon to protect your assets and never have to start over financially again. Vance and Seth help high net worth individuals, families, business owners, and investors structure an asset-protected, tax-free fortress for their families. Learn how to keep what you earn and use the velocity of money to create your own private banking system. Join us on this journey as we explore the secret strategies of the rich and political elite and help you take total control of your financial security. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Private Banking Strategies Podcast with Vance, Lowe, and Seth Hicks. Vance, how are you?
I'm doing great today. I'm really looking forward to get back in. We had to kind of end the podcast because of time. These are topics you've got to do a little bit more explaining with. So I'm really anxious to get going today.
Yep. So our title is How to Crush It with Private Banking Strategies. And this is part two of what's going to be a two-part series. And we're talking about money laws, money principles. And this is something that most people think they know a lot about, but often we find that they don't. And these are new concepts. So we've talked about the 10% law of always paying ourselves back first and off the top of the income that comes into our control into your private bank. We've talked about never spending principal and putting the money that's in your bank to work and getting a system of repayment back into your bank. And now we're going to talk about another money principle that you've outlined for folks and teach people how to do. And that's following a well-defined financial plan each and every month. Tell us more about that.
Great, Seth. I appreciate being able to just talk to people for a little bit. These are three money laws that we can't ignore. An engine runs because it's put together properly, and when some part or component goes out, that engine's not going to run properly. Baking a cake, if we leave a component out, that's not going to turn out the way we want. With money, it's the same way. And the problem is, we all think we know about money. We all think we know that if this situation happens, here's how I would handle it. If that situation happens, I would do it this way. And folks, we're here to tell you, we're making a bold statement here, but it has proven out for years since we've been doing this. You're wrong. We're not only wrong, we're 180 degrees off. The true answer is just the opposite of the way we've been actually programmed. Our thoughts probably do not originate with us. It originated with people that we trusted. Banking, we usually trust banks, and they're the only ones that get the money back. They're the only ones that have a system out there for us to make them money. And that's a sad scenario. Most people in the United States do not feel like they are in slavery, and they are. They have to go to work because they spend their principal. They have to replace it. They're not staying pace, or they're not growing like they thought they would because they're not obeying the 10% law. And now they're lost in an ocean of different financial influences thinking, oh, you need to do this. No, you need to do that. No, this is the way we all do it. And they're all wrong. Okay, so what's the right way? So when we come up with a strategy and a plan, we've got to have what's called a roadmap to follow it. With GPS now and our smartphones, you can put an address in and you can pretty much get there. Okay? Before the smartphone and GPS, I used to travel to people's homes all over a metroplex and all over the country, and I would need to know their address, and I would have to purchase maps. Because if I didn't have that map, I was going to get lost. I couldn't find my way there. It's the same thing with money, folks, only it's actually more desperate today, simply because when the banking cartel took over our nation's education system, and that's who controls our schools, they took everything about money out. Everything. Now, economy, there are classes in college about, economy and stuff like that, but they don't teach you about money, the value, the velocity. Everybody thinks that interest rates are the proper way to go. Well, it's not either. So Once everything is organized and show them how to never spend principal again, get them to the 10% law, then we show them how to put the banking equation back in their life. And there's a roadmap to be able to follow. It's simple. Folks, this whole strategy, this whole system calls for one thing, for you to let go of the way you think you know about money and follow a new path. But you know what? It won't even take you 20 minutes a month to make this change and see success every single month. Wow, I'm this much better off. Wow, I don't have to pay tax on this money. And everybody think, ooh, that's a no-no. You know, you're going against. No, we're not going against the IRS. It's even stated in the IRS code, and I think we've said this, Seth, a million times. Income taxes are voluntary. Federal income tax, state income tax, that's a different thing. But federal income tax is voluntary. But once you sign the 1040 form, they got you. Okay, you've agreed you owe taxes and you agreed to follow all the tax laws and rules. Anyway, that's a different subject. But the roadmap, the financial plan that's well defined out for you, shows you where you're at and where you're going, what to do next. Everybody knows they need a financial plan. I haven't asked that question in almost 40 years that people say, yeah, I know, but I'm too busy. They make a conscious effort not to follow this. And it's strange, Seth. It's the way with all three of these laws. Oh, I know I'm supposed to pay myself first. I know kind of I'm not supposed to spend principal, but I don't know how to get around that. And I'm too busy to follow a financial law. So we provide that for them. We update financial roadmaps for all of our clients so that they always know where they are and where they want to go. And when the financial picture changes, which it changes because life is dynamic, it was ever changing. I'm hoping that people can understand that these are universal laws that have to be followed. And if followed, it comes with predictable outputs and some guarantees.
Yeah, and I think that one of the best examples kind of comes from a client study that we've talked about before when it comes to following a well-defined financial plan. I had a chiropractor and his wife come into your office, and you were their last stop before the bankruptcy attorney. They were heavily in debt, over $500,000 in debt, high credit card debts, you name it. Every type of debt that exists, they had it. And they were distraught. They didn't know if they could continue to finance their children's college education. They were going to pull them out of school. They were really extremely distraught. But when you began to show them that they had enough asset resources to fund their bank, to start their own private bank, and use the capital in their private bank to go out and purchase the worst debt and begin to make payments, and purchase the next debt and begin to make repayments on those just with the capital that they already had in their hands and that was already coming under their control, they were able to follow a well-defined financial plan. We call it an 8-year analysis. And this 8-year analysis that you walk people through gives them a step-by-step protocol that shows them who to pay, how much to pay, and cycle their money back into their bank and come out of debt and optimize their principal at putting it to work. That's really one of the best examples of following a well-defined financial plan. So we've talked about that case study and example in prior podcasts, and we've got some deep dives on exactly how that worked. The prior 3 podcasts to this, Crushing It with Private Banking Strategies, demonstrates some of that 8-year analysis in a deep dive. So folks, if that is something you want to dig into further, go back and listen to the 3 podcasts just before this 2-part series, and we deep dive into spreadsheets and show the financial plan, the 8-year analysis put into work.
You know, Seth, a lot of people are desperate to try to show improvement, and so they take risk. And we deal with some of those different groups of people who take more money than they can afford to lose and put it in a high-risk investment, hoping that they'll hit a home run. And they don't need to do that. But with lack of knowledge, they're forced to. So, folks, we want to provide that knowledge so that you can do it yourself. In the case that Seth just mentioned, they were able to buy, and I'm using these words purposely, they were easily able to buy this debt that they were under. To the outside world, paid off, but to them, the use of money is to extend it and get it back. So they bought the debt. That was the investment that they made. Yeah, think about it, folks. If you're in debt, you've got a lot of credit cards. I just had another interview this morning. He's got $130,000 worth of credit card debt. And I'm just smiling because I can show him how that's probably the best investment he could ever make, is to buy that debt and have the guy in the mirror continue to make the payment. This is where people go wrong. They think, hey, I've had to pay a lot of money for my car, but this was the last payment. I don't want any more payments on my car. The question is, did you get the money back? Well, no. You need to keep paying, making payments, rent payments or whatever else, so that you receive that money back. And when you get the money back, you can go get the next car. Okay, instead of having to come up and spend principal or going to work and earning it and just blowing the money, thinking because everybody else does it that way, you should do it that way too. Parkinson himself, after World War II, he came in and had an idea how he could make our economy much stronger, at least the automobile industry. And this is described in Nelson's book. And America had won the World War. And they were afflicted with another law that we're going to talk about called the arrival syndrome. Hey, we're the king, we're the most powerful nation on the planet. We don't need your advice since, you're an American and part of the system here. Why don't we assign you to Japan, who we just conquered, and you can help them out in their automobile world? What happened to the automobile world and Japan after World War II? They literally dominated the automobile business because of Parkinson. He's got a lot of clout. He knows what he was doing. But one of the things that he said, and the main law is that you have to bring home more money than you spend. You've got to have that spread, a big enough spread so that you can do the right things. If you set your budget and decide you're going to buy a house and you're going to buy a car because you got this much more room before you're at 100% expenses versus take home, you're cutting your throat. You're never going to make it because of the unknown. And to get there, he says you've got to be aware of many things. So there's many things in this law that need to be taught. One is that a luxury, once lived, becomes a necessity, okay? And the United States has exploded over that. Cell phones. Did you know that a cell phone is an absolute luxury? It's not a necessity, but how many homes don't even have a dedicated phone in their home with a phone line? They're all digital, okay? They're all cell phones. Air conditioning in a car. It's not something that's absolutely necessary, but we can't live without it in the cars or in our homes. So people always complain that, oh, I don't have the money. I don't have this or that. And then we look at and they belong to Netflix and they've got all these movie channels that they're paying for, and which would more than enough, fund their private independency. People have the money. Their choices are what make up the components of their lifestyle. And so in Nelson Nash's book, he talks about how we think and our imagination, what stakes we put in the ground. We are limited to the stakes we put in the ground that make us go no further. So
living within your means is an absolute fundamental cornerstone. And if you're tight on cash, being able to reduce those luxuries that are not necessary. Starbucks coffee, and like you said, $800 iPhones, and continuing to run like a hamster on a financial wheel. Or you can tighten your belt, reevaluate, learn some money rules and tools, and change your whole financial trajectory. So Parkinson's law, like you said, is one of the fundamental laws for money rules. The next one that I want to talk about is the golden rule. And the golden rule, a lot of times people think, well, it's treat others how you want to be treated. And that's true in a biblical context, in a moral context. But the golden rule in the terms of the financial world, as Nelson described it, is he who has the gold makes the rules. So when you have the gold, you determine how it's used. You determine if you're going to spend it or lend it or what the loan terms are. You make all the rules. But if you don't have the money, you don't have the gold, so to speak, to do what you want to do, whether it's purchase a car, purchase a home, finance, you're eating out on a credit card, you have to borrow money from the banks. And the banks then determine what the terms of the loan are. They just set the interest rates, how much you're going to pay. And that's a whole nother discussion about volume of interest versus the rate of interest, and how these banks have brainwashed people into thinking you've got a 4% home loan when actually you're paying 3 times what they're lending you. That's not 4%. And so you're at the mercy of the banks, and you have to agree to their terms if you want their money. So the bank, if they have all the gold and you have none, you got to play by their rules. They're making the rules.
And to follow that up with a little bit of a story, many years ago, Panasonic went to Mexico to put their factory in because labor was a whole lot cheaper there. And so they laid out the format, and they actually bought property, and they were going to employ, I think it was around 7,000 people. But they went in there and presented that to the authorities and everything else. And the authorities said, okay, well, you can do that, but you got to pay us this much money. You're going to pay straight to us. And Panasonic said, no, we're not going to make a stupid deal like that. Well, that ticked them off. We're in control here. And they leaned forward. He said, I can see Nelson doing this. He said, the man representing Panasonic leaned forward and said, hell no. We're the one with the money wanting to put the plan in. Being able to employ 7,000 of your people, and changing their economic condition. We're the one with the money. You're not telling us what to do. So as a matter of fact, we're taking our offer off the table and going someplace else to be able to conduct proper business. And they did. And Mexico lost out on that. They wouldn't budge. And that tells you how corrupt the country is. I even think our country's probably at that point, our government.
It's almost ridiculous, the negotiation that the Mexican government tried to strong arm. I mean, it'd be kind of like going into your branch bank for some folks and going, no, I'm not going to take a 4% loan. I want a 2% loan. And my payments aren't going to be over 30 years. They're going to be over 100 years. You're not at the mercy of a bank when you have your own private bank capitalized and you're able to finance your purchases. So, I mean, a bank is never going to be your friend. I mean, Bob Hope, he called it, a bank is a place that will lend you money when you don't need it, when you don't have the need for it effectively. So when you create your own private bank, you begin to accumulate your cash necessary to finance investments and lifestyle, cars, homes, everything that you spend money on, and you become independent of a system that can dictate terms to you. So that's a key money principle in the golden rule as well, and being able to steadily capitalize your banking system.
Did that story feel like it was about you? Do you feel like you are generating a lot of revenue, but are not moving forward as fast as you would like? Do you feel you should be making more progress toward your financial goals? Do you feel stuck? Let us help you get unstuck. Are you ready to take action and get your own private bank? Please visit us at www.privatebankingstrategies.com.
Now let's talk about another money principle that Nelson teaches on called the arrival syndrome. And thinking you know something that you don't. You've arrived. You can't teach me anything else about money. I'm a financial planner. I'm the president of the branch bank. You've got a great story, an example of a client that came in and her father was the president of a branch bank, but really didn't know anything about money. Tell us about that.
He set up his daughter and new son-in-law with a financial budget, saying, this is how you do it. And this closely reminds me of my father-in-law doing the same thing. My father-in-law helped us purchase our first home and laid out, some laws and some rules. And when we wouldn't quite conform, why, he would let us know. And I learned very quickly, I did not want to be dominated by him. In this situation, she came in with her expenses. She had cars, a boat, and a home, and expenses, and she couldn't see on her father's plan how they were going to get out of debt. And she wanted to get out of debt and be better off, but that plan had all the money going in payments, and they couldn't see their, it was a 30-year plan, and they wanted more. And they heard about the private banking and came in, and we did up a plan, and wow, to the outside world, they were completely out of debt, including owning their mortgage in 5 years, in less than 60 months. And they were just, we're doing this. And she was so excited, she told her father. And her father just went ballistic. You can't do that. No, that's not the way you do it. You've got to do it my way. I'm the president of a bank. I know how money works, blah, 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 blah. And she put her foot down. She was kind of like her father with the same attributes and whatnot. She said, Dad, leave us alone. We appreciate your help, but we found a way that we're going to do it. He said, this is not right. What you're saying is not correct. And I love you and I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to go out with you and see this guy and expose him for what he is. And so they did. I was sweating bullets. And so I laid things out and showed him the analysis. We had a different software program back then, but it broke everything out month to month. And I asked her, are these the payments? Yes, these are the payments. Okay. This is how much we're going to put aside in a life insurance contract, which is going to create cash value to let you purchase that loan, correct? Yes, this is the amount. And I had the father say, do you have any argument with that? He wanted to try to control the conversation, and I had to shut that down right up front, saying, you listen and you respond, and then you can give us your critique afterwards. But if you want to know what she's doing, you can't keep interrupting. So we did. We went through every line item, and he just looked, and he was harder than heck at the beginning. But by the time we finished, here is month 60. They now own the debt. They are the bank. And what we're all about is for them to put their own banking equation in. This got his attention. He had no idea. Okay. He thought he knew about money. He doesn't know how money's made. Branch presidents is what I discovered then and there. They do not know how money works. They've worked their way up in the system and done it the way they were taught by the banks. And the presidents do the audits, make sure that their bank can pass the audit. They're not the owners. They don't know how much profit the banks make. They know how much money comes in and moves up the ladder, but he didn't know. And he was absolutely shocked. And by the end of that meeting, he just turned to his daughter and said, I apologize. I had no idea that this was available. He says, this is amazing. And it kind of makes me angry with the way I've been taught and the way I've been doing things, knowing that this is there. He became my first branch president client. He actually started one, much larger than his kids did. But then the word kind of got out, and maybe one of the best classifications of clients we have are people who deal with money. They think they know, and when they find out about this, it's amazing. Their arrival syndrome means, look, I've been there, I've done that. Now, I don't know how many times when I talk about life insurance that we use a special life insurance contract that we put together for banking purposes. Their mind immediately goes to what their experience is in life insurance. We are in an era of vast amounts of information, and for us to deal with it, we have to categorize it quickly. Americans are notorious for that, especially college graduates. Okay. I know this, I know that. You don't know anything. Okay. You think you do based upon what was told to you. You haven't experienced that. So you solve things you think is correct. We're famous in America for what's called herd mentality. We're all doing it this way. Yeah, it's wrong, but we're doing it together. We may walk off of a financial failure cliff, but we'll do it together.
Right.
I would hate to succeed with money alone. I would be all alone. Let go, folks. Pull up the stakes. There's something better out there when it comes to money. Why would they have taken out everything to do with money out of our education system, from kindergarten all the way through a master's schooling and degree, if they didn't have an evil plan, to try to control? And through history of man, you cannot control man and the eagerness for knowledge.
And here are some seeds to plant in consideration of the arrival syndrome. You can get the money back. You can use the same dollar more than once. You can have the velocity of money that gives you a tailwind and a push by using the same dollar over and over again in a system that's carefully designed by us. And so we mention that to some people, especially first time prospects and folks that are learning about private banking, they're confused by that. And so those are some things that they can go to school on and in our podcast and learn some things that they thought they might already know. We've got 2 more laws we're going to talk about. The next one is the use it or lose it law. Use it or lose it, a great principle. Describe that for us.
I want to take everybody back. Everybody throughout their lifetime comes across fantastic ideas. Wow, this is neat. Or they learned this or they were told that. The reason it's not in their life today is they never put it into action. They never did it. They never actually used it. Oh, it's a great idea. I'll do it someday. But we lose it. And this is so vital here. We're going to teach you about money. In order for you to do that, if you really want to be and switch to this and really get a hold of how money works, you've got to be prepared to learn something new and leave behind the way you used to treat money. I call it the alien effect. When we talk about money and show people about money, they just look at you like, good night. You're from Mars or something, you're from someplace else. Okay. That's not the way we do it. Be prepared for that. Okay. We're going to pull up stakes. We're going to plant them in true money principles, and we're going to go forward, because if we don't use it, we're going to lose it. And, this is important for me to say this maybe at this time. Even our clients, I classify people in 3 categories. There's that group of people who are in charge. They make things happen. They hear, they do, okay? And they improve. Everybody knows that type of person. Then there's the type of person who sits and watches things happen. They analyze, okay? I need to figure all of this out before I pull the trigger. So I want to know about this, but never doing group. And then there's that third group. They wonder, what the heck happened? They just go through life. They're happy, as long as I get a paycheck and I go home and drink my beer, watch football games or sports or whatever, I'm happy. Okay. And that's the case with clients. I've seen some of our clients, and Seth, I know you have too, but we have those clients that just are right on track with their 8-year analysis, their monthly plan. I've done this, I've fallen a little behind here, but I'll make it up over here. Okay. Then there's the other one who, okay, I've got everything kind of set up. Okay. When's the last time you read Nelson's book? When did you learn something new about the subject? Oh, the last time we talked. They're not drivers. They're not moving forward. And then there's the people who, okay, I'm all excited, and they take out a contract and they go in and take out all the cash value. And then they're done. Well, gosh, I don't want to have to pay that back. I'd rather use money for something else. And then they don't see it working for them. They lose it. They're going to surrender their policies or turn them in or whatever else. And we have to deal with that. We have to choose, where we're going and how to get there.
Once you've got the knowledge and you've got tools in your tool belt, you have to actually put them to work and sharpen them and apply them.
This is not something that's going to take over their life and something they can't comprehend. The brain always fights back, especially when we're adults. Oh, gosh, I got to go wake up and learn something new. Oh, man, that's going to be hard. This is the easiest thing I've ever come across.
The next principle that Nelson talks about, and he calls it the Willie Sutton law.
Folks, wherever someone is making a profit, growing, expanding, there's going to be a group of people who want in on that. And if I came up to you and said, you're making a lot of money and you've got a lot of money now, and I pull out a gun and say, the gun is only here because otherwise you wouldn't give me some of that money. Well, I would be put in jail. But the same thing occurs by committee. Willie Sutton was a famous bank robber. He would go out back when the Federal Reserve kind of conquered things back in the early 1900s. Branch banking started, and this guy would go out to these territorial banks and rob banks. Bonnie and Clyde's another one, and got caught finally and put in prison and got interviewed. And the interviewer said, Willie, why did you rob banks? And this was after a long discussion, talking about his life and everything else. And Willie looked at him, put the arms on the table, and went, duh, that's where the money is. I can't go rob stores or people because they don't have as much. So I rob banks. And who is the Willie Sutton in our day, folks? It's the IRS. The IRS is out there. They want their share of every time money moves. They're not, their greed is unbound. Okay? They want it, they want it, they want it. The problem is there's no congressional laws in effect that require us to pay federal income tax. So that might be something people want to get more familiar with. But for now, there's always somebody out there that wants to rob us. Where's the safest place on the planet to store money? Banks have been failing and they get robbed. More banks have failed over this last decade than 2 decades before, but have been covered up. We know that, Silicon Valley Bank, went belly up, another one did, and then they went hush. And so our government no longer is reporting the way they are required to, because they might have snuck a law in that says they don't need to do that anymore. But banks are no longer the safe haven.
Right. The banks are one of the most insecure places, and we talk a lot about that with regards to fractionalized lending, derivative banking, the FDIC being insolvent. We talk on these issues that quite a bit, and we're not the only ones. I mean, we're in a consortium of academics and Harvard professors and other folks who demonstrate that this type of banking system that we are currently in, the traditional banking system, will fail. And you can't just print money into prosperity. And the FDIC doesn't have the assets to insure deposits. So when we talk about Willie Sutton and the Willie Sutton law, it's very much about people wanting to take things from other people where they know there's a resource. I mean, it's like people who win the lottery. If your name is published, all the friends, all the family, everybody and anybody, they come to those people who win the lottery and start looking for money. That's a demonstration of the Willie Sutton law. So it can be third parties, it can be catfish attorneys, governments.
Seth, you know that there's one more depth about the Willie Sutton law. We've been taught, and falsely, when we have excess money, we need to go put it to work. We need to go buy investments, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, whatever else, thinking that we're putting the money to work. We're not. We're putting it to sleep. It has to stay in that account in order to earn, quote, interest. Banks are famous for starting that. Oh, you want to put it in one of our CDs. So they tie the money up and they say, you get, back then it was a pretty decent interest rate. I remember putting money in the CD and I could get 6 and 7%. And now it's not anywhere close to that. They could easily do that, but they've learned they don't have to. The public has now been taught to expect a whole lot less. Someone else has the money. You no longer have your control of your money. Someone else does, and they're going to make the lion's share. They're going to make a ton of money off of you and only pay you what they can get away with, and or you're going to take all the risk, because if they do something wrong, oh, well, we lost it. They don't have to come up with that money, and they don't have to pay you back. So that's just typical investment. That's our stock market right now. You believe how our stock market runs off of fictitious information. Average rates of return are mathematically correct, but that's the only way that those average rates of return are correct. They have nothing to do and no correlation to what people have earned on that investment for their experience. So,
right. Well, and in that regard, I'm going to highlight a few of the pillars of private banking strategies that protect you from government intrusion. One of the great things about private banking is that you've got financial privacy within that ecosystem, and you've got a tax-free system that's carved out by the IRS itself in 7702 of the Internal Revenue Code. It effectively carves out all of the money within your private banking contracts, and as it grows and compounds, and as you take it out and put it back in with interest, there's no taxable event. In addition to that, unlike centralized banks, you've got laws that protect the cash in your private banking system. So the asset protection is governed by state law, state by state, but many states like Texas and Florida, Oklahoma, many southern states provide 100% protection of all your cash value and your death benefit from creditors. And so you're in a tax-free system. It's compounding and growing year after year, which compounding growth is a whole discussion on its own. It's this eighth wonder of the world, as Albert Einstein is quoted as saying, where you've got this compounding growth, and it's in a tax-free system, fully liquid, asset protected. It's financially free. The insurance company doesn't make any disclosures on money's in and money's out. It's a private contract. And so it's very much unlike banking in a traditional banking system where your money is entirely at risk. It is not financially private. It's not asset protected. Your FDIC insurance guarantees are effectively worthless if the system fails. And it's apples and oranges. So, folks, with that, I'm going to lay out our website again. It's privatebankingstrategies.com. If this podcast resonates with you and other content that you get from us, you'll have the opportunity to schedule an exploratory call with Vance when you put your name and email into our website pop-up. And in exchange for that, we offer you a free book that's called What the Banks Don't Want You to Know, Secrets the Banks Don't Want You to Know that keep you from getting wealthy. And you can listen to that on an audio version, or you can also read it in a PDF. And you'll get valuable updates and emails from us. You'll get the latest podcasts and resources. But ultimately, you want to schedule an exploratory call with Vance if this stuff resonates with you and get your private bank started and start to implement these principles that we're talking about and take back your financial freedom. So, Vance, any closing remarks?
No, I think you said it very, very well. Just do yourself a favor, take the next step. Learn more about money.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, folks. Come back and listen to us with the next podcast. We've got them coming out every week and valuable content that teaches you how to do this stuff.
Did that story feel like it was about you? Do you feel you should be making more progress toward your financial goals? Do you feel stuck? Let us help you get unstuck. Are you ready to take action and get your own private bank? Please visit us at www.privatebankingstrategies.com.
Thank you for listening to the Private Banking Strategies Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.